Hi, everybody. Welcome to Pockets Full of Soup, the storytelling show. I'm your host, Jared Petty. I am proud to be joined today by an exceptional guest. You are, sir?
I am Astronaut José Hernández. How you doing, Jared?
I am well today. You have lived a life that most of us can only dream of. You have traveled beyond the boundaries of the earth and literally touched the sky. How many human beings have ever had an opportunity to do that, Jose?
Well, it's about 500 people out of 7 billion have had the privilege of seeing our world from a perspective that's pretty unique from the outside.
Can you describe that perspective briefly? I mean, I guess it's hard to summarize. If we haven't been there, it's going to be hard to relate. But can you tell us what it's like to look down on this planet?
Well, just imagine yourself being inside a space shuttle, which is, you're inside of like a flight cabin, and you're floating on a continuous basis, and you're going around the world at 17,500 miles an hour. And then you circumnavigate the globe once every 90 minutes. So once you look out the window, you're over North America, Central America, and then you go off and do something. 20, 30 minutes later, you're over China. Wow. Or you're over India or over Europe. I mean, it's just words can't do it justice of what you feel when you're up there.
What's that do to your philosophical perspective?
Well, it makes you think about the fact that you look down and you look at the world, it's so perfect, and then you look on the opposite side and you see the rest of the universe, and you gotta wonder with yourself and say, this is just too perfect for it to have been a coincidence. Huh, wow. So it leaves you very humbled, and I'm a spiritual, religious man, and I actually became more religious as a result, because I said, wow, this is amazing.
Can you expound on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's just what I told you, Jared. It's just that the fact that I think, a lot of people say, hey, science and religion can't coexist. And I said, no, it can't, because, science tells you how things work. And I think religion tells you why things work. And then certainly looking at both perspectives of our world in one window and the rest of the universe on the other side, it's just too perfect for it to be a coincidence.
Now, Jose, you mentioned something that I was actually planning on asking you about, so I'm so excited about this. Your mission was on the International Space Station?
Yes, sir. It was aboard Space Shuttle Discovery, STS-128 mission, okay. August 28, 2009, 14-day mission to the International Space Station. I think we were like the second to last mission to complete construction of the International Space Station.
Wow. So you were mentioning looking out the other side.
Yeah.
Every time I see pictures from the space station of the windows, they're from the perspective looking toward Earth.
Yes.
Are there windows on the other side looking to the other?
Well, you have what's called a cupola on top, which is pretty neat. You stick your head out, and it's about the height of your head. And you've got a 360-degree panoramic view of the whole universe. So yeah.
Wow. So I've heard astronauts often in interviews or read from their books about the experience of looking at Earth and the profound effect that has. When you look out at the other end, when you look out into infinity, what's that like?
It's it doesn't look that much different from here on Earth. With the exception of the fact that, the stars are not twinkling. You don't have the atmosphere to create that twinkling effect. So they look like LEDs. And if you get dark adapted enough and you look out in the dark sky enough, you start to see the different constellations, and it's real crystal clear, and you convince yourself you acquire that depth perception where you can actually say that star is a lot further than that one, kind of thing.
Wow. Do you ever dream of outer space since you've come home?
Yeah, of course. Yeah? Absolutely. Don't ask me if I dreamt in color, but I have dreamed about being back in space. Sure.
Is it strange? Like, do you feel the weightlessness again in your dream? Or?
Yeah. You feel everything. You kind of like relive the moments of your 14 days that you spend up in space.
What's weightlessness like? How would you describe that to someone who's never experienced it? I mean, I'm a hefty fellow. I would love to experience weightlessness, I think, so that I feel a little lighter. But what's it like to be?
Well, it's actually quite a interesting feeling, because first of all, when you're weightless, your whole body is weightless. So inside your body, you have cavities, and so your organs are also floating around inside your. So it kind of gives you like this wheezy feeling that you have to get used to. It's almost like being a little motion sickness at the beginning, and then when you put on shirts and things of that nature, you don't appreciate how much gravity actually helps on your clothes, because when you have a shirt or something on, it's actually doing this thing over your head kind of thing.
Wow.
And so you're sort of trying to do this thing. And,
it's constantly trying to escape.
Exactly.
That's amazing. And so an astronaut like you go through intensive training. You spend a lot of your life, I assume, working toward a truly lofty goal, knowing that many are trying and few will succeed.
That's right.
Then you're immensely prepared. So I imagine most contingencies are explained before you arrive, but I do want to know, what surprised you about space, despite all the preparation, once you got there? Life in space. Was there something you didn't anticipate that struck you when you arrived?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as you mentioned, when you get selected as an astronaut candidate. And so you train for 2 years before you're even eligible for a flight assignment. Once you get assigned to a flight, it's another 18 to 24 months of training, depending on the complexity of the mission.
Wow.
And I tell you, I think, a real funny anecdote that I have in space that I didn't expect was, when you train for those 14-day mission for 18 months, you repeat a lot of the things over and over, so that, and then they'll break stuff on you so that you know how to react or how to fix things.
Okay.
But one of the simple things that we practice over and over was replacing the air filters. The air filters in the cabin, air filters is a real simple thing. You've got a panel, you got 4 screws, and you got the filter, and you replace the filter, and you put it back in and screw back the screws, and you're done with.
Because breathing is nice.
Breathing is nice, and so you do that. Right after liftoff, you replace it to put a fresh one, and then I think about every 4 or 5 days you put a fresh one. So they always have the rookies do that because it's such a mundane, and you can't screw that up, right?
Yeah.
So you have the rookies do that first, and the senior folks always get a kick out of it because they laugh at how you do it, because of the fact that you don't think about it. You said, okay, I'm going to do it as I did in training. Go get that screwdriver and get that new filter ready, and here we are going to change the filter. Well, remember, you're floating, right? So the first thing you do is you go in there and you're going to unscrew a screw. And, of course, when you're going to unscrew it, you turn it one way, and physics tells you for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when you turn it one way, your body turns the other way.
So you corkscrew?
Exactly.
Oh, your whole body's there spinning in space.
And then you sort of scratch your head here and say, when I did it down there, it worked pretty good. What's the deal? Of course, you're floating in space. And then I remember I looked at the floor, and you've got some duct tape that's taped up there, and I said, "What's this for?" And so you remove that, and there's some foot loops. So you put your feet in there, and that's how you. But of course, they don't tell you that in ground training, because you're standing up, you're stepping over the foot loops during training all this time, ignoring them, not knowing how useful they're going to be once you're up in space.
So everything changes despite all the preparation. A mundane task like unscrewing something becomes a challenge. It's
exactly.
Really cool. Also sounds like a kind of a practical joke.
Exactly.
That's really neat. You talked earlier about the spiritual element of looking down and the role between science and faith and perspective on life. Something I wanted to ask you about in regard to that, I've often wondered this, and you're the first person I've ever had the opportunity to ask. Your life is very different than almost anyone else's. 14 days of your life define, I think, the way a lot of people probably look at you after that time when they meet you. Yet you are how old?
I am 55.
55 years old, only 2 weeks of which were spent in this extraordinary place.
Yes.
And yet largely you are defined by those who meet you by that. What is that like, that the dichotomy of your entire life, that brief window in one place, and then this life on Earth before and after? What is it like living in that dichotomy of experience?
Well, first of all, you simplify it a little bit too much into saying, well, it's only 14 days in space.
Okay.
Recall that many years before that, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Right.
So the dream was actually conceived when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
Watching the very last Apollo mission, Apollo 17, Gene Cernan walking on the surface of the moon. You could picture a 10-year-old kid standing next to a black and white TV, you know, those old vacuum tube technology console TVs that take 5 minutes to turn on.
Yeah.
Holding on to a rabbit ear antennas to improve reception. If you can imagine looking a boy watching Gene Cernan walk on the moon, that was me. So I was 10 years old, and it wasn't until 42 that I got selected. So you're talking about 32 years of my life that I somewhat dedicated to wanting to become an astronaut.
To the mission of 32-year pursuit.
So I don't feel like it's those 14 days that are defining me.
Yeah.
I feel it's a journey of 32 years to get selected, and then another 6 years of training to actually realize the dream. So it's actually about 48 years, you know.
Is the mission still,
38 years,
for you in your life, is the mission still going on? When you came home?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The mission's still going on because I looked at it, you know, I'll tell you, when I wanted to be an astronaut and the things that I did it really for a selfish reason. It's because I wanted to do it. I mean, that's what I dreamed of becoming ever since I saw Gene Cernan. But I'll tell you, once I got selected, I saw the impact I had on the community, especially here in Stockton. And I said, wow, now I'm a role model.
Huh.
And so I take that role very serious. And so I don't think my journey is done yet. And so that's what I try and do is keep inspiring kids. And through my story, I let them know that anything is possible in life, including reaching for the stars, and I'm living proof of that.
Cool. You mentioned Stockton, California. Is this your home?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I was born and raised here in Stockton.
Born and raised here in Stockton.
And I have my office here now, as you can see.
Yeah, your office is lovely. It's
you.
practically a museum, and it's been wonderful meeting Andrea here at the desk,
Yes.
and some of the other folks
She's
you work with.
my trusted assistant here.
By the time I was 20 years old, I'm just an ordinary person. I didn't work hard for anything. I didn't pursue space. And I had touched 3 different pieces of the moon by the time I was 20. One in D.C., one in Kennedy, one in Huntsville. And I was just like, when did it dawned on me that I live in an age where an ordinary Joe like me can touch different pieces of another world.
That's correct.
And people like you made that possible.
Yes.
You risked your life to do that.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And the dangers are real.
The dangers are real, but humans by nature are explorers. I mean, when back in the old days, that's why you had people like Christopher Columbus, Magellan, and those type of people exploring new worlds. Now that we know everything about our world, well, not quite because we still got to explore the subsurface, but it's a natural tendency to say, hey, I see that big round thing that comes around, our moon, that comes full cycle once a month. I said, wouldn't it be nice to go and check that out? And we've done it. Now we see that red planet up there, and that's next on our sights.
When are we going to get there?
I think realistically 25, 30 years from now.
Okay. I think that's the realistic estimate. Well, write that down, folks. We'll check in 25,
exactly.
30
We'll
years.
be back.
See how that goes. Who are you thankful for, Jose? Who in the course of your life and what brought you here? Who are the people that you're grateful for?
Well, I think there's quite a few people that I'm grateful for because I think that as you go along in life and you have these accomplishments, there's a lot of people that help you along the way. You can't pretend that you did it all by yourself. And so everything starts with respect to, first of all, my parents. My parents pushed education. Even though they only have a third grade education, my mom, every day after school, sat us down in the kitchen table, and while she made us something to eat, snack, there we were doing our homework, and we weren't allowed to get up until we were finished. And she was very adamant, only a third grade education.
What made her value that?
I think she just wanted a better life for us because we worked as migrant farm workers.
Okay.
And so we worked out in the fields, and on Saturday and Sundays we were out there working with our parents. And while most of my friends loved summer vacation, we hated it because we knew that meant 7 days a week out there working in the fields. And
so your family all out there working together?
Yes. And
here
so,
in Stockton?
Here in Stockton area. And so my mom always wanted this better life for us, and she felt that it was through education. And, she would, when we go to the bank, she would point out at a bank manager, has a suit and tie, and she says, what do you see over there? And I would say, well, I see a man. She said, no, I see you. I said, that's how I want to see you when you grow up. She says, I don't want you to work like us. We had just come down from work and we were hot and sweaty and dirty. So I don't want you to be dressed like this when you're an adult. So I want you to be dressed like that, working in an air conditioning place like this, which was a bank.
What was it like for your mother seeing the course that your life took?
Oh, she's very proud. She's nice and healthy, and thank God we still have her. And she's very, 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 very happy and proud, as you can imagine.
Does she introduce you to everyone as this is my son who's been to outer
space?
Astronaut. The astronaut, yeah.
It's my son, the astronaut.
That's
really or,
cool.
I go over and she calls everybody, right? It's people start coming. And then after that, it's my dad.
Yeah.
My dad also has a third grade education, and, he was very, very instrumental in making me believe in myself. This is the power of empowerment when you empower someone to believe. I remember I told you the dream was conceived of me wanting to be an astronaut when I was 10 years old. Best thing I could have done that evening was to share that dream with my dad. He takes me to the kitchen table, same kitchen table my mom makes us do our homework every day, and it makes me justify why I want to be an astronaut.
He challenged you?
Yeah, he challenged me. He said, well, why do you want to be an astronaut? Of course, having listened to Walter Cronkite narrate the moonwalk, Gene Cernan, and having to listen to Gene Cernan, I kind of just regurgitated what Walter Cronkite had said that night. I told my dad, it's just that I can't believe that we as humans can send someone 250,000 miles away to the surface of the moon and bring them back safe and sound. I want to be part of that. And he must have saw the determination of a 10-year-old boy that the next thing that he said really surprised me. He looked at me and he says, I think you can do it. And again, the power of empowerment. He says, but if you want to do it, he said, you need to follow these 5 steps. I'm going to give you a recipe, son. You follow it to the letter, and I promise you, you'll reach your goal. I said, what are they, Dad? He said, first, he said, define your goal. What do you want to be when you grow up? Of course, I blurted out, astronaut. Figure 1 out of 5 of them was there, right?
All right.
Second, he says, recognize how far you are from your goal. And we were living in the east side of Stockton back then, in a 2-bedroom, dilapidated rental, bad side of the east side of Stockton. I looked around the kitchen table. I said, Dad, we can't beef any further than this. And instead of him bopping me one, he kind of laughed and said, I'm glad you recognize, son, because the third step is you got to draw yourself a roadmap from where you know where you're at, given by your smart remark you do, to where you want to go. Because that's what's going to keep you focused and it's going to serve as a guide to get to your goal.
Wow.
I said, what's the forefront? He says, education. So you got to stay in school. You got to go to college. Without college, you're not going to reach your goal. And then he said, 5th and final, he pointed outside. He said, that effort you put out on weekends, 7 days a week during the summer, working in the fields, picking cucumbers, tomatoes, peaches, pears, cherries, onions, and grapes? I said, yeah. He said, that same work ethic, he pointed to my books on the kitchen table, says, you put it here in your studies. And when you graduate, you put it in your job. He said, always, always deliver more than what people expect out of you. He says, you mix that up, son. He says, that's the recipe to succeed.
Wow.
And I said, wow. That's what I said. I went to bed so happy that night because I said, wow, my parents believe I could be an astronaut. Ergo, I'm going to be one. And never looked back since. The only one thing I would add is a 6th ingredient, and that is perseverance, because NASA rejected me not once, not twice, not even 3 times. NASA rejected me 11 times. It wasn't
Wow.
It wasn't until the 12th time that I got selected. So that's perseverance. So that's the 6th ingredient I add. But that's the second person I would thank. The third person is my second grade teacher, Miss Young.
Miss Young.
Miss Young.
I had a second grade teacher that was a Miss Young.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fillmore Elementary is where I had her.
I was in D.C.
Okay. So. And Miss Young, I mentioned that we were migrant farm workers.
Yeah.
At the time, we used to spend 2 months in Southern California, 2 months in Central California, and about 5 months here in Northern California, and then we would go back home.
Okay.
To Mexico.
To Mexico.
Right, Central Mexico. And then the whole year will repeat itself.
Mm-hmm.
But Miss Young, one day when I told her that we were leaving and that I needed 3 months worth of homework, because we would do homework over there in Mexico, not go to school, but self-school ourselves, she finally blew a gasket, I guess, and said, you tell your parents I'm going to go home and visit them. Because remember, I come from a family of 4, and I'm the youngest of 4. Mm-hmm. So she had my 3 other older siblings before, so I think the 4th time was the charm.
Okay.
And so I finally, she came over and convinced my parents that we should stop living this nomadic lifestyle and stay in one place. And that's when we started to make Stockton our home.
All right.
So that's
so she convinced your parents that was best for your education.
Exactly.
For the kids.
And to my parents' credit, they listened and we stayed here in Stockton.
And they stayed. So were your parents immigrants then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so they both came over from Mexico.
Yes. Immigrants, and they became permanent residents, and then U.S. citizens. And then the third and fourth person will be junior high and high school teachers. Miss Silvia Bayo, who was my Spanish teacher and my biology teacher. And then Mr. David Ellis, who was basically my math teacher in junior high and in high school.
So teachers, again and again, mentors and teachers,
yes,
people you're thankful for. Tell us about these folks.
Well, these folks were great. I had the fortune of the fact that we graduated from junior high, they also followed us to high school. Okay. And so we had them again. So
you had the same teachers twice.
Yeah, so I had them for multiple years. Mr. Ellis was very instrumental in bringing calculus to high school and teaching us calculus. So he pushed the limit, and he had students that learned a lot, and so that were willing to learn. So he was willing to teach more advanced material, and did so.
Did you comprehend at that age the importance of mathematics to your dream of being an astronaut?
Not really. I just knew I had to take math and science, and so I took that, but I didn't realize the importance of it at that point. But I'm sure glad I had good teachers like him, and then Miss Silvia Bayo, who first of all made me not forget my native language, Spanish. She taught us Spanish, and then she taught us science in terms of biology, and also a great lady that pushed us to the limit.
What was her greatest talent as a teacher, would you say?
I would say being very strict and expecting almost the impossible of students.
Oh, wow. What's the value of expecting almost the impossible from someone?
I think it helps you develop a good work ethic.
Okay.
It helps you prepare for the challenges ahead of the rocky road that you're gonna be going through, or the trail you're gonna be opening up.
So you've talked a lot about mentors and teachers, and you're a father of, you said 5?
5 kids.
5 kids. Do you find the lessons that you learned from these people making their way into your relationship with your children?
Absolutely. I'm so proud of my kids right now. I've got 3 in college right now.
Wow.
One of them is working on his PhD in aerospace engineering.
That's cool.
Another one's in business management. Another one is in mathematics. So they're all doing very well.
Wow.
We're very proud of them.
What lesson do you feel like you learned the best? Which of these has affected you most as a father, of all the things you've learned from these people you were grateful for?
I think it's just developing a good work ethic.
Yeah.
I think that's something that translates across anything you decide to do. Mm-hmm. If you have a good work ethic, whatever it is you decide to do, everything from being a nuclear scientist to being a custodian. If you do a great job, you're going to do very well. It's whatever you select. If you got a good work ethic, you're going to do very well.
Anyone else you want to thank today?
Yeah, I think the last one was a role model that I looked up to was when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I was barely getting ready to go to college. And this is the power of role models. was the fact that I heard on the radio that a person got selected to NASA, and he had a name similar to mine in terms of Hispanic surname. His name was Dr. Franklin Chang Diaz.
Okay.
Chang. I knew. I said, okay, that's from the from Asia, but then Diaz. I said, okay, that's pretty Hispanic. Let me look into this guy, and I found out that in studying his story, I found out there were so many similarities between him and I, because he came from Costa Rica, and he came as an immigrant, and so he had brown skin like I did. When I heard him speaking over the radio, he had an accent like I did, and he came from very humble beginnings like I did.
How old were you when you first heard
I was
him?
17. I was in high school.
Okay.
And he got selected, and I said, wow, if he got selected and he came from a similar background than I did, that sort of just even super empowered me. I said, then it's possible. I can do it, because there's a guy that, that's just like me. And
Did you ever get the opportunity to meet Dr. Diaz?
Oh, yeah, we were good friends. He was actually, when they interview astronauts, there's about 18 people, and about a third of them are astronauts.
Okay.
And in the interview committee, he was sitting on the interview committee.
So when you go in for the interview, the man that you heard on the radio that helped you go, I can do this, is
there interviewing me.
How did you? I'd blow up. How did you do that?
Oh no, actually, it actually prevented me from being nervous, because
Wow.
I said, I think I have at least one advocate here.
That's really cool.
As opposed to not knowing anybody, I said, at least I think there's one person that can identify with me. And so I kind of sort of just, basically relaxed more during the interview, and had a very great interview and got selected.
That's fantastic. What's an interview like for being an astronaut? I'd love to, if you don't mind the tangent.
Well, it's pretty much like the way you're doing it right now. They just want to know about you.
Okay.
They just want to see what makes you tick. I mean, at that point, you're one of 100 finalists.
Okay.
And there's over 18,000 people that are qualified to be an astronaut, and you're one of the 100 finalists. So there's no doubt at that point of your ability.
Okay.
You've been filtered so much that they know you're qualified. The question they ask themselves is, hey, do I want to spend 6 months in a tin can with this guy? And so that's what they're trying to get out. Are you gonna be a good person to work for? Or are you gonna be a difficult? Are you gonna be a prima donna? Or are you gonna be courteous? Well, those are the type of things that they try to bring out of you.
That's really.
And I think through your storytelling, through your experiences, how you've handled adversity, I think that's how they decide whether they want to be with this guy or not.
Have you always had this gift for storytelling? Because you're very natural, obviously, and I know you have a lot of practice. You've been a professional speaker for many, many years now.
Well, I'm not sure I'm a good storyteller, but I just speak from the heart all the time. I mean, none of my talks, because I've given hundreds of talks, none of them are the same, because I don't have a script. It's just a matter of telling the story. The basic elements are there, but I tell it in a different way every time, because it's it comes out natural from the heart.
You'd make a good pastor.
Yeah, I think I would, right?
Yeah, you'd make a good minister. That's a good sermon writer.
I consider that a compliment.
It was meant to be.
Yes.
I'm going to take that kind of hard left turn we do in the middle of the show now, if that's all right. First, I want to thank our Patreon producers, Nick Rie and Robert Nieder, whose generous support makes this show possible.
Hey, Nick and Robert, thank you.
Oh, yeah, thanks, guys, really. And everyone that supports us on Patreon, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and on iTunes and all the other places that you can visit Pockets Full of Soup. That email address, if you want to say hi, is mail@pocketsfullofsoup.com. That's mail@pocketsfullofsoup.com. And you can also join the Pockets Full of Soup Facebook group for free anytime you want. That's just a friendly bunch of folks that like to talk on Facebook. But now we are headed into Instant Noodles, the lightning round of silly questions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So first, we always start with this one. What is best sandwich?
Best sandwich?
Best sandwich.
I think it's Italian meats.
Italian meat sandwich.
Yes.
Like what kind of layered meats are we talking here?
Well, let's see. We're talking about salami, pepperoni, provolone, and then a cheese and mayonnaise and lettuce and tomatoes and maybe some spices.
Ooh, what kind of bread?
I like white bread. It's not the healthiest, but sin, you might as well go all the way.
Go all the way. Don't sin halfway.
Exactly.
What is best space food?
Best space food for me, it was the shrimp cocktail.
They have shrimp cocktail in space?
They have shrimp cocktail in space. Everything's dehydrated.
Okay.
And so what you do is we have in our little kitchenette, we have a little needle, and it has a little valve stem, kind of like a bicycle stem, with the bag of the dried food that's in there.
Okay.
It could be chicken with rice. It could be mashed potatoes. It could be peas. And in the case that I'm talking about, it's basically just dried up shrimp with some sauce powder.
Okay.
You inject it in there. You put your 4 ounces hot water. You push the button, and water gets dispensed into the little bag, and you let it sit there for 5 minutes, nice and warm. We got a little oven, convection oven. We'll put it in there, get even more warm.
Okay.
And then once you get it out, you get a scissors, and you open up a little corner, and you just start carefully eating it. And I tell you, it's the best stuff in space.
That's cool. You mentioned carefully eating it. Did dinner ever get away?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it gets away.
What
Especially
happens
if you're
when
eating
dinner
rice.
How do you get dinner after it gets away?
Well, when it gets away, you sort of just hit it back, and you try to hit it back into a ball, and then you do this thing.
Now, there's the legendary story from one of I believe the Apollo missions about the sandwiches being smuggled on board. Is there any truth to that?
I don't know. I have on the Apollo ones, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, we've smuggled some contraband.
Did you ever sneak
there.
it? What'd you sneak on board?
I have no comment on that.
All right.
You can't get me on tape with that.
I understand. I wasn't trying to get you in trouble. What's worst space food?
The worst space food? What happens is your taste buds sort of develop a different liking when you're up in space. Because I remember you take a food tasting class.
Oh.
And you actually taste about over 100 different foods. And you're grading them from 1 to 5. 5 being you really like this stuff. 1, you don't care for it. And you're grading it. And then the nutritionists then make up your diet, right? Based on what you graded. Of course, they want you to have a balanced diet. Mm-hmm. So then for all 14 days of the trip, actually they do it for about 18 days. They have your menu of your 3 meals, what you're going to eat and all that.
So it's a personally customized menu?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. The foods are there, and then each astronaut has a little color. MS2 is green, so everything with a green dot was mine. Everything with a red dot was the commander's. You don't touch the commander's food, stuff like that, right? So when you start eating, you say, okay, well, this is for breakfast, this is for lunch, this is for dinner. And then sometimes you get something that comes out, and you say, man, I could have swore I gave this a 1. Why did they put it in here?
There it is anyway. Do you think that it's a secret psychological test, maybe?
No, I think the things I gave 5 were probably high in fat, high in sugar.
Oh, that's it. So you've just got to have what's nutritious.
You got to have what's nutritious.
Sense.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't remember something that really tasted terrible. I wouldn't eat it. Mm-hmm. But I do remember things tasted different on the ground than when I went and tasted it and ate it up in space. I said, man, I can remember this tasting a lot better.
You mentioned explorers earlier.
Yes.
And who is your favorite explorer?
Who is my favorite explorer? I'm not sure I have a favorite one, but
okay.
Magellan sort of seems to be one because he was down in the bottoms of the earth there exploring, and I think he's one of the ones that I said he really took a lot of chances and when he decided to go out and explore.
Yeah, the circumnavigation is one of the most stunning feats in human history.
Exactly.
To do that when no one else ever has. Well, let me ask you then, based on Magellan, and we talked about Mars earlier,
sure.
But in your mind, looking into, you are one of the few human beings that has lived Star Trek. You're the first generation of Starfleet. Looking into the far future, if you could cultivate one dream long term for humanity in discovery and exploration, what would you like to see happen? What would you inspire people toward long term? Maybe not thinking in terms of 20 years or 50 years or even 100, but in 1,000. What do you think is possible? What would you like to see us try?
Well, I think I would like to see us try two things.
Okay.
The first thing is I would like for more work to be done towards research to prevent say a strike of an asteroid into our planet. Because I think something like that is probably inevitable. It's going to happen sooner or later. It may not happen in our lifetime, but it will happen. So I think developing technology to counteract that is something, is a prudent thing to do. So the surveillance to be able to get the information as early as possible that one is on its way and it is going to impact. And then the technology to be able to either divert it or break it up into pieces or just divert its path. You know, when you're way out there and you take something that's massive out there and you put it next to it, you're going to create some type of attraction that's probably enough to sort of change its path ever so slight. The more farther out you are, the less of an angle you have to change to change its destruction path.
So the earlier the detection, the easier it is to divert.
So that's one thing.
Okay.
And then the next thing is that we need to keep exploring. We need to keep pushing the limits of exploration. And so I would love to see a moon base be established where we have long duration. We learn how to live outside our planet as a test bed for technologies we can test, so that one day we can then, 20 years from now, we can launch into Mars and also have a long base there. I wouldn't say colonize because the conditions aren't right yet, but who knows? Maybe that's going to help us develop the technology to go outside our solar system and do find a planet that does have the atmosphere that's very similar to us.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. What's your favorite word?
My favorite word, education.
Education.
Absolutely.
After listening to your interview, I think that the reason behind that one's pretty self-evident.
Yes. You can go far with education.
What would you say? I'm sure you're asked this a lot, but I'd love to hear you say it here. What would you say to somebody that has the dream you had, or somebody that's watching this right now, just as you watched Apollo 17? What do you want to say to that person if they're sitting there going, I want to do that someday?
I would say you should go for it. I would say shoot for the stars, because even if you don't make it, you may end up on the moon. I'm one of the ones that would say that anything is possible if you're willing to, get an education, work hard for it, and never give up on yourselves. A lot of people always told me, don't you get frustrated, or didn't you get frustrated when you were rejected so many times? And I said, well, let's think about it. I said, ever since I was 10, I wanted to be an astronaut. What did that force me to do? Okay, it forced me to go to college. It forced me to get a graduate degree. It forced me to get a good job at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. It forced me to work in the nuclear nonproliferation arena. It forced me to help be the co-inventor of the first full-field digital mammography system for early breast cancer detection. Forced me to be a pilot. Forced me to learn Russian. I said, if I don't get selected, that's not a bad consolation prize. So that's why I'm saying that. That's why I literally say shoot for the stars, because if you end up on the moon, that's okay.
Is that a José Hernández original? Because I love that. That's fantastic. I would like to steal that as a motto, if you don't mind.
Not a problem.
Thank you. You mentioned you worked in nuclear nonproliferation.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question about the world we live in at the moment.
Scary times.
Yeah, that is the perception that I have, and I think a lot of people have right now. You're an expert on this. You've done this professionally. What are your thoughts about the current climate of nuclear tension and nuclear proliferation?
Well, I mean, I think any time you deal in that subject matter, you got to tread very lightly. And the one thing that disappoints me is that our leaders on both sides, tend to throw insults at each other, and tend to sort of take the bully puppet very lightly, and sort of their ego and their chest thumping. And in one of those things, you could have some repercussions, because one of those may not blink and will go ahead and push that button. And that's scary. And so it's very scary times right now because of that. I don't take that lightly, and I'm very disappointed that our leader uses the rhetoric and chooses to go down to the level of North Korea, and when what we should be doing is trying to promote diplomacy and try to promote a diplomatic solution.
Do you think brinksmanship can be walked back?
I think so. Absolutely. You can always walk it back. The thing is, are you willing to walk it back? And, sometimes we just got to swallow our pride and do it.
A last question for you that's going to seem silly after all the others, but we always finish with this question.
Sure.
It's a very important one. Cake or pie?
I would say pie, because then you can have ice cream.
Well chosen, sir. Well chosen indeed. Mr. Hernandez, it's been an honor and a privilege and a true delight.
Thank you very much, Jared. It's been a pleasure. You're a great interviewer, so thank you very much for this time. Time went by real quickly.
Well, thank you for it. And folks, once again, mail at pocketsfullofsoup.com. And if folks want to find out more about what you're doing,
absolutely,
Mr. Hernandez, where can they find out? Where can they learn more
they
about
can find out through our foundation. We have a foundation called José Hernández Reaching for the Stars. And you can look at us at www.astrojh.org.
Okay.
And there you can see all the type of activities that we do to promote STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. Our goal is to wake up the scientific curiosity of our kids here in the San Joaquin Valley, so that they too can consider careers in science and engineering.
You just made my wife, who's sitting off camera, very happy. She just finished her instructional technology degree to work in STEM.
Great.
So
all
that's
right.
really cool.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Yeah, please check out, again, that URL one more time.
astrojh.org.
All right. Well, thank you. And until next time, friends, I thank you for watching and listening. And reach for the stars. And even if you end up in the moon, that's still pretty cool.
Exactly.